Keanu Reeves had just wrapped up a long day on the set of his latest movie. The film set was buzzing with energy, but Keanu, feeling a need for some fresh air and peace, decided to step away for a while. It was a beautiful, sunny afternoon, and he had the perfect idea to unwind. He would explore the quiet town nearby. Dressed simply and casually, wearing a cap to avoid being recognized, he strolled down the quiet streets. Despite all the work he had been doing, something was missing that day. It was his motorcycle. Keanu's motorcycle was back in Los Angeles, and he couldn't stop thinking about it. Riding wasn't just a hobby for him, it was a way of life. The feeling of the wind against his face, the rumble of the engine, the freedom of the open road, these were things he couldn't easily forget. As he walked, Keanu realized he needed that feeling again more than ever. Then, as he was wandering down the street, he spotted it. At the end of the block was a shiny, modern motorcycle dealership called Aurora Motors. The golden letters on the sign shimmered in the sunlight, and the building's glass walls gave him a glimpse of the beautiful high-end motorcycles displayed inside. It was the kind of place that screamed luxury and exclusivity, the perfect store for someone like Keanu to find the bike he was craving. Keanu decided to go in. He walked through the automatic door and a bell rang softly as he entered. Inside, the showroom gleamed with white marble floors, reflecting the bright lights. The motorcycles were more like works of art than just machines, each one placed carefully on a pedestal, glowing under the lights. It was everything Keanu had imagined, but as he wandered the showroom admiring the motorcycles, something unexpected happened. A cold voice broke his thoughts. "Good afternoon," said a tall salesman who had approached him. The man was dressed in a sharp suit, and his expression was a mix of professionalism and superiority. "Can I help you?" Keanu adjusted his cap, trying to stay calm and blend in. He didn't want to make a big fuss. "I'm looking for a motorcycle. Something classic, something that has power and freedom," Keanu said, his tone relaxed but clear. The salesman raised an eyebrow, looking Keanu over. He wasn't impressed. From the cap and casual clothes to the calm demeanor, nothing about Keanu seemed to match the type of customer the salesman usually dealt with. The salesman forced a smile but spoke with an air of arrogance. "Of course," he said, almost dismissively. "Our motorcycles are quite exclusive. We cater to customers looking for something truly special." Keanu didn't react to the attitude. He had dealt with this kind of thing before. "Do you also do rentals?" he asked, trying to keep the conversation going. The salesman laughed dryly. "No, sir. We don't do rentals here. This is a luxury dealership. Our bikes are for sale only." Keanu smiled slightly. "I see. I'm still interested in seeing your best models. I'm looking for something special." The salesman's smile tightened as he led Keanu deeper into the showroom. "Very well, but I must warn you. Our motorcycles aren't for just anyone," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. The salesman stopped in front of a Ducati Panigale V4, an impressive sports bike with a sleek, aggressive design. "This is the Ducati Panigale V4, the salesman said, gesturing toward the bike with exaggerated pride. "It's one of our top-of-the-line models. It combines outstanding design with the latest technology. It's a bike for those who truly understand motorcycles and know what they're looking for." Keanu stepped closer to the bike and examined it carefully. It was indeed a beautiful machine, but it wasn't what he was after. He shook his head slightly. "It's beautiful, but it's not what I'm looking for. I want something classic, something that connects me to the road." The salesman looked a little annoyed. He wasn't used to customers turning down such an expensive and high-tech bike. But he didn't give up. "Perhaps something more basic is what you need," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. He walked over to a Harley-Davidson Fatboy 114, a sturdy, well-known motorcycle with chrome details. "This is the Harley-Davidson Fatboy. It's an iconic model, reliable but not too flashy. It's more your style, I'm sure." Keanu stepped over to the Harley and ran his hand along the smooth handlebars. There was something about this bike that felt right. A smile slowly spread across his face. "This is it," he said, his voice filled with genuine excitement. "This bike has soul." The salesman was surprised. "Well," he said, trying to hide his disbelief, "if this is the one you want, we can arrange a test ride. But our policy is very strict. We don't just let anyone take our bikes for a spin." Keanu nodded and patiently waited beside the Harley-Davidson Fatboy, admiring every detail. He was content, but he also knew the salesman's attitude was not going to make this easy. After what felt like a long time, the salesman came back, looking even more stiff and formal than before. "I spoke with the manager," the salesman said, adjusting the cuffs of his suit. "Unfortunately, we cannot authorize a test ride. Our policy is very clear. Keanu raised an eyebrow. What exactly is the policy? He asked, trying to keep his voice calm. The salesman sighed, clearly frustrated with the situation. Only customers who meet certain criteria can test ride our bikes. They need to have the experience to handle machines as powerful as these. It's not a personal decision, just following the rules. Keanu stayed calm but now spoke with a firmer tone. I understand the need for safety, but I'm sure I have the necessary experience to ride this motorcycle. The salesman, not convinced, responded with a mocking laugh. Really? And what makes you think you have the experience to handle such a powerful bike? He asked, his voice laced with doubt. Keanu, keeping his composure, looked directly at the salesman. I've ridden all types of motorcycles in all kinds of situations, he said calmly. I think I can handle it. The salesman seemed unimpressed. I'm sorry, but that's not enough. We have rules and we can't make exceptions. Keanu paused, feeling the frustration building, but he didn't let it show. He could tell the salesman was judging him based on his appearance, not his actual experience. He took a deep breath and spoke again. I'm not asking for special treatment. I just want a fair chance to test the bike before buying it. Isn't that the standard procedure? The salesman hesitated, but he still didn't give in. Yes, but only under the right circumstances. We have to follow the manager's guidelines. Keanu's patience was wearing thin, but he wasn't about to back down. I understand, but if we're going to follow these rules, I'd like to speak directly with the manager. Maybe he can explain the policy more clearly. The salesman's smile completely disappeared. The manager is busy right now, he said quickly, hoping to end the conversation. Keanu didn't budge. That's fine. I'll wait. At this point, other employees in the store began to notice the tense situation. Some whispered to each other, and Keanu could feel the eyes of the staff on him. He stood his ground, not making a scene, but clearly not willing to let the salesman's judgment slide. Keanu looked the salesman in the eye. Let me ask you something, he said. Is this about your store's policy, or is it about how you see me? The salesman's eyes widened in surprise. He hadn't expected Keanu to challenge him like that. He tried to cover up his discomfort, but his stiff posture gave him away. It's not personal, the salesman replied, but his voice was less confident than before. Keanu smiled slightly, his calm demeanor unwavering. He turned back to the Harley-Davidson Fat Boy, running his fingers over its chrome finish as he waited for the manager to come. He wasn't about to let this man's prejudice stop him from getting the chance to test the bike. And as the minutes passed, it was clear to everyone in the store. Keanu Reeves wasn't just a movie star. He was someone who would stand his ground and challenge unfair treatment. Matthews, adjusting his tie with practiced ease, lifted his chin slightly as he looked at Keanu. His voice was smooth, almost too confident as he spoke. These motorcycles aren't for just anyone. You need a certain level of experience and commitment to handle them. We're talking about high-performance machines here. Keanu, still standing beside the motorcycle, looked up at Matthews. His face remained neutral, but there was a quiet intensity in his eyes. It was the kind of look that showed he was both listening carefully and thinking deeply. His tone remained calm as he responded, I understand that. But what exactly makes you believe I don't have enough experience? Matthews chuckled, a brief, dismissive sound, as if Keanu's question were somehow silly. He took a step closer, tilting his head slightly, with a slight smirk playing on his lips. With all due respect, sir, your appearance doesn't exactly inspire confidence, Matthews said, his voice dripping with condescension. Take this Harley for example. It has a Milwaukee 8114 engine, a high-torque powerhouse. This bike isn't something anyone can handle. It requires practice, and more than that, it requires the right profile. The right profile. Keanu paused for a moment, absorbing Matthews's words. He knew exactly what the salesman was implying but chose to stay calm and give him the chance to explain further. He tilted his head slightly, his voice steady. The right profile? He repeated. And what exactly makes you think I don't fit that profile? Matthews glanced at Keanu's simple clothes and baseball cap. It was obvious that he was making judgments based on what Keanu was wearing. You know how it is, Matthews said, shrugging. Our customers tend to be people who care about looking important. Prestige, exclusivity. It's not just about riding the bike. It's about representing it. Do you understand? Keanu remained silent for a moment. He was deep in thought, considering Matthews's words. Then, with a tone that held just the right hint of challenge, he asked, What makes you think I wouldn't represent this motorcycle well? Matthews blinked in surprise, caught off guard by the directness of the question. He hesitated but quickly regained his composure, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Well, let's see," he said, looking Keanu up and down again. "You came in here asking about renting bikes. That's not what our regular customers do. They come in with the intention of buying, not renting. Plus," he paused, glancing back at Keanu's attire, "you just don't look like the kind of person who'd fit in at Aurora Motors." Keanu's patience was starting to wear thin. He could feel the irritation growing inside him, but he knew he needed to stay calm. He crossed his arms and spoke with a slow, controlled breath. "So basically you're saying I don't look like I can afford or handle this bike, right?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. Matthews laughed again, now with a touch of sarcasm. "Don't get me wrong, sir," he said, "I just think this bike requires a certain kind of commitment. So far, I haven't seen anything that suggests you're ready for it." The showroom was beginning to fill with more people's attention. Whispers started to spread. An older man standing near a Triumph motorcycle crossed his arms, watching the interaction with a look of curiosity and disapproval. More people in the showroom were turning to watch the conversation. Keanu took a step closer to Matthews, closing the distance between them. He looked the salesman directly in the eyes, his voice still calm, but now carrying an undeniable firmness. "Don't you think you're being a bit too quick to judge someone you've just met?" Matthews hesitated for a second, clearly caught off guard by Keanu's directness. But his pride wouldn't let him back down. He quickly tried to regain control of the situation. "Sir, I'm not judging you," Matthews said, trying to sound professional. "I'm just doing my job, protecting the interests of the store. It's my duty to make sure that our motorcycles end up in the right hands." Keanu let out a slight chuckle, but there was no humor in it. "The right hands," he repeated, his voice carrying a hint of skepticism. "Interesting." He stepped back slightly, crossing his arms as he continued to study the salesman. "Don't you think that before drawing conclusions, you should at least give me a fair chance to prove my ability?" Matthews, who was now feeling uncomfortable, didn't immediately respond. His confidence was starting to slip away as the silence in the showroom deepened. Everyone was watching the exchange, and it was clear that Matthews was starting to lose control of the situation. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could say anything, a firm voice interrupted from behind them. "What's going on here?" Everyone turned to see the store manager, Oliver Grant, walking toward them with purpose. He had a serious expression on his face, and it was clear that he wasn't happy with the atmosphere that had developed. Oliver came up to them with steady steps, exuding authority. He addressed Matthews first. "I want to hear exactly what's going on here," he said firmly. Matthews swallowed hard, adjusting his tie for what seemed like the 100th time. He tried to stay composed, but it was obvious that the situation had gotten out of his control. "Mr. Grant," he began, "I was just explaining our test drive policy to the customer. He insists on trying the bike, but—" Mr. Grant interrupted him, casting a stern look at Matthews. "I want to hear it from Mr. Reeves," he said, turning his attention to Keanu. Keanu nodded respectfully. "Thank you for stepping in, Mr. Grant. As I was explaining, I came in with an interest in buying a motorcycle. But the conversation quickly turned to doubts about my ability and intentions, based on what I can only assume are preconceptions about my appearance." Oliver listened closely, his face growing more uncomfortable as Keanu spoke. He understood that something had gone very wrong. The tension in the showroom was palpable now. All eyes were on them, and it was clear that everyone was waiting to see how this situation would unfold. Oliver took a deep breath, turning his attention to Matthews. "This is not how we treat our customers," he said firmly. "We aim to treat everyone with respect and fairness, no matter who they are or what they look like." Matthews, now realizing the mistake he had made by judging Keanu, grew visibly nervous. He opened his mouth to speak, but Mr. Grant raised his hand to stop him. "This is not how we operate here, Matthews," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "I will personally arrange the test drive for Mr. Reeves, and I want to make sure he receives the treatment any customer deserves. Especially someone who clearly has a passion for motorcycles." Keanu, maintaining his calm composure, smiled slightly. "Thank you for your promptness, Mr. Grant. It's good to see leadership stepping in to make things right." Oliver turned to one of the employees standing nearby. "Please prepare the Harley-Davidson for Mr. Reeves' test drive," he said. "I'll make sure everything is ready for him." Keanu nodded in appreciation, and as he walked toward the bike, the tension in the showroom began to ease. People started talking again, and some even whispered about how to treat customers fairly, no matter who they were or how they looked. As Keanu prepared the bike for his ride, he gave one last look at Oliver and Matthews. It was a silent reminder of the importance of giving everyone a fair chance. Keanu climbed onto the Harley, started the engine, and the deep sound of the motor filled the air. Keanu felt the power of the bike beneath him as he gently accelerated, the smooth road opening up before him. The world seemed to slow down around him, and the only thing that mattered was the feeling of freedom that the motorcycle gave him. It was everything he needed: freedom, simplicity, and a connection to something real. As he rode down the quiet streets, Keanu thought about the interaction he had just experienced. It wasn't about the bike or the test drive, it was about how he had been treated. The judgment, the assumptions, and the unfairness were things he had faced before. But today things had turned out differently. Today he had been given a fair chance, and for that he was grateful. The road stretched out before him, and Keanu rode on, feeling the wind on his face and the roar of the engine as a reminder of the power of not only the motorcycle but also of standing up for what's right. Keanu knew that sometimes people didn't take him seriously because of how he looked. They saw his casual clothes and thought he was just a regular guy, even though he was one of the most famous actors in the world. He didn't mind being treated like this at first, but what bothered him more was that it wasn't just about him. It was a bigger problem. The world often judged people by how they looked or what they had, rather than who they really were. Keanu knew that something needed to change. He was on his motorcycle, riding through the countryside, when he felt the wind on his face. This was why he loved riding so much. It made him feel free and alive. There was nothing like the feeling of being on the road, the hum of the Harley beneath him, and the wind blowing through his hair. It reminded him of why he did the things he loved, even in the middle of his busy life. In these moments he felt connected to the world around him. It was a feeling that was priceless to him. It was something that Matthews, the arrogant salesman back at the motorcycle store, probably didn't understand. Keanu turned onto a small side road that led to a little roadside cafe. He parked his Harley near the entrance and carefully got off the bike. As he was about to take off his helmet, he noticed a group of young people sitting at a table nearby. They were whispering and staring at him, clearly excited. "Hey, is that him?" one of them said, pointing at Keanu. "No way," another person exclaimed, almost knocking over her coffee. "It's him, it's Keanu Reeves." Keanu smiled and gave them a small wave. He had been recognized, and it made him feel good. He walked up to the counter inside the cafe and ordered a simple black coffee. The young people, still buzzing with excitement, hesitated for a moment before approaching him. One of them held up a phone and asked, "Excuse me, are you Keanu Reeves? We're huge fans of your work." Keanu smiled warmly and nodded. "Yes, that's me. It's a pleasure to meet you," he said. The group was thrilled. They began telling him how much they loved his movies, especially The Matrix and John Wick. They shared how the films had made a big impact on their lives. Keanu listened patiently, nodding as they spoke. He asked them questions about their favorite parts of the movies and what they loved the most. His genuine interest seemed to put them at ease. "You're so laid back," one of the fans said, sounding surprised. "I mean, you're one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, but here you are, riding a motorcycle like any ordinary person." Keanu chuckled softly. "I'm just a guy who loves to ride," he said. "No matter what I do for a living, moments like this are what keep me connected to the world. This is where I feel most myself." The fans took a few photos with him, and Keanu made sure to thank them for their kindness. He enjoyed these simple, real interactions without the glitz and glamour that came with being a movie star. As he headed back to his bike, he felt a sense of peace. He waved goodbye to the group, who were still in awe of their encounter with him. Once back on the road, Keanu felt lighter, as if the weight of the world had been lifted off his shoulders. These moments of real human connection, without judgment or expectations, were what he cherished the most. Keanu understood that true wealth wasn't about fame or money. It was about how you treated people and how they treated you in return. This simple lesson was something that Matthews, the salesman, probably didn't yet understand. Keanu soon arrived back at the motorcycle store, and as he parked his Harley, he took a moment to reflect. He wanted to do something important. The showroom was still busy, and there was a noticeable tension in the air. Oliver Grant, the manager, was standing at the counter while Matthews was in the back, clearly feeling uncomfortable. Other employees and customers were watching from a distance, curious about what would happen next. Keanu took off his helmet and walked towards Oliver. He was calm, but there was a sense of determination in his eyes. "I like the bike," he said with a slight smile. "But before we talk about buying it, I think we need to talk about something more important." Oliver looked at him with a raised eyebrow, wondering what was coming next. "Of course, Mr. Reeves," Oliver said, a little confused. "What's on your mind?" Keanu glanced over at Matthews, who quickly looked away, not wanting to make eye contact. Keanu continued, I want to talk about how you treat your customers. Because today I think things can change not just for me but for everyone who walks through these doors." The showroom fell silent. All the employees and customers were paying attention, waiting to hear what Keanu would say. Oliver looked intrigued, but he was also uncertain about what was coming. Keanu took a deep breath before speaking again. "When I first came into this store, I was treated as if I didn't matter. I was judged because of what I was wearing because I wasn't dressed up. I had a question that didn't meet your expectations, and I could tell that you didn't take me seriously because of that." Keanu turned his gaze to Matthews, who shifted uncomfortably at the mention of his actions. "But this is about more than just me. It's about how everyone is treated here." Oliver listened carefully, looking increasingly uncomfortable as Keanu spoke. "I understand that you have policies to protect the store's assets," Keanu said, "but what happened here today wasn't about following rules. It was about prejudice. It was about judging someone based on their appearance. And that's not okay." Keanu paused for a moment, looking around at the others in the showroom. "The bigger problem isn't just the way I was treated," he said. "It's how many other people come into this store and are treated the same way. How many others feel unwelcome or judged just because of how they look or what they wear. How many customers are turned away because they aren't seen as good enough." Keanu took a deep breath before continuing. "If this continues, you're going to lose more than just business. You're going to lose the chance to connect people with something that could really change their lives." Oliver took a long pause, clearly thinking about what Keanu had said. He knew that Keanu was right. He didn't know how many people had come into the store and felt rejected or looked down upon. But he could see that something needed to change. "I'm sorry, Mr. Reeves," Oliver said after a while. "There's no excuse for how my team treated you. I will make sure we address this with the staff right away." Keanu shook his head. "I'm not looking for an apology. I'm not interested in just hearing sorry and then moving on. I want to see real change. I want you to make this store a place where customers are treated with respect, where people are seen as individuals, not judged based on their appearance. I want to see a training program put in place for everyone who works here, not just about customer service, but about empathy and understanding. Teach your team to treat every customer as a person, not just as a sale." Oliver seemed taken aback. "That's a big change. It's not going to be easy. Customers have certain expectations and they're used to things being done a certain way." Keanu smiled softly. "The real risk is in not changing. If you take the risk now, you could set an example for others. You can show that businesses can make money and still treat people with dignity and respect. That's the kind of business I would want to support." Oliver took a deep breath and looked at his employees, who were now all watching him closely. He knew this wasn't just a private conversation. It was a moment that could define the future of the store. After a long pause, Oliver finally nodded. "You're right," he said slowly. "This is something that needs to change. Starting today, I will work with the team to implement what you've suggested. I will develop a plan to make this store a place where everyone, no matter who they are, will be treated with respect." Keanu smiled, relieved that his message had been heard. "Thank you. I'm glad you're open to this. I look forward to seeing how you put these ideas into action." Oliver turned to the other employees, his voice now firm and clear. "I want everyone to know that starting today, things will be different. We're going to change how we treat our customers. We're going to make this a place that shows kindness and respect to everyone, no matter where they come from." Matthews, who had been standing quietly at the back, looked terrified. He avoided eye contact with Keanu, but there was no escaping the fact that he had been part of the problem. Oliver looked over at him and said, "Matthews, we'll talk about your behavior later. This is not how we want to treat people here." Keanu didn't say anything to Matthews, but he knew that the salesman would have a lot to think about. As Keanu left the store, the atmosphere felt completely different. The customers and employees who had been watching in silence started to clap, some with genuine smiles and others with a sense of relief. Keanu smiled and waved to them, feeling like he had done something important. He got back on his Harley, started the engine and rode away. As he drove, the wind rushing past him, he reflected on the power of small actions. He had taken a stand for what he believed was right, and it had made a difference. Keanu knew that this was just the beginning. Maybe, just maybe, people everywhere could learn to treat others with kindness and respect, just as he had shown them today. If you enjoyed this story, share your thoughts in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe for more stories. I'll see you in the next video.